It's time now for County-Wide, a presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. You'll hear about the interesting issues and happenings that affect all our lives. Here's today's County-Wide.
Well, welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. I'm Brad Miller, and very happy to welcome onto our program today Mike Dechter. And Mike is with the Arizona Mushroom Society. I didn't know there was one either. I saw a tremendously fun article recently in the Arizona Daily Sun, kind of profiling a young woman in Flagstaff. She and her father kind of connected over their enjoyment of getting out and hunting mushrooms, hiking, and Flagstaff tailor-made for that activity. And I got a hold of Mike and just wanted to talk a little bit about his passion and how it might translate to all of us. So we'll say good day to Mike Dechter with the Arizona Mushroom Society. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great and glad to be here.
Well, let's just kind of jump right on into it here. When we say the Arizona Mushroom Society, I'd not heard of it. I got to admit that gave me a little bit of a chuckle, but it's like any other hobby or any other activity. It can be, hiking and physical fitness got to be a big part of a true mushroom hunter's passions and abilities. Talk to me a bit about how you got started, hunting mushrooms and where it's taken you and why you've kind of jumped on this endeavor.
Sure thing. I really got started with wild mushrooms in northern New Mexico when I lived and worked there. I worked for the Forest Service, and I had previously been a biologist. And they had me just helping out on some fires, and we saw a guy bumping down the road, and we had a little snag fire, and I could see him kind of like stopping every so often and getting out of his car and picking something and throwing it into the back of the truck. And then he came over to us, and he was, asking what we were doing, cutting down the snag, and I asked him about the mushrooms, and he said, we call them butter mushrooms. My family's been collecting them for a long time. And these things were huge. I mean, he was just tossing them in the back of a truck, like,
firewood
bread or something like that. Yeah, like firewood, exactly. And so I was so, being a biologist and not knowing anything about these, it really just flipped the switch for me. And I was like, I need to find out everything what's going on here. I ended up taking one home, cooking it up and eating it. And it was very good, as this gentleman told me. And from there on, I just wanted to know everything about it. And so I've been studying wild mushrooms here in the Southwest for the past 15 years. And I've been doing educational forays and helping run the Arizona Mushroom Society so we can really educate people about the amazing mycoflora we have here in the southwestern United States.
Well, that's terrific. And it seems like I know that one question probably that you get more than any other, and I'm certainly going to ask it during our show today. How do I know the good mushrooms from the bad ones? Some of them can be, toxic, in fact, and harmful, perhaps even fatal. So that's what we got to be very, very careful about. And we'll get to that in a moment. But first, I wanted to say, I've been here for a long time, and this is one of the wettest monsoons that I can remember in recent years. I haven't seen the numbers. To me, to the layman, it seems like a real wet season, and some warm temperatures would be just ideal for mushrooms. Is that right?
Yeah, we're having an amazing monsoon season, just like last year, but even better this year. And a lot of the rain totals I've seen, we're getting double, sometimes triple what we normally get in a monsoon season. And that really makes it so that mushrooms are happy and fruiting like crazy in our mountains. They really like, good soaking rains over a long period of time. So their mycelium, or the roots, which actually make up the organism, have lots of time to grow and lots of time to fruit and make mushrooms. And so this is a great season for that. Here in Arizona, we are a little limited on our season. Usually August is pretty much when we have our monsoons and when we have our fruiting. And then it starts getting a little too cold in the mountainous areas of September. And so now's a really good time to get out and observe the mushrooms that you see out there. And if you can, try to learn a little bit about one or two of them, just to get to know, kind of some of the characteristics that you're looking for when you see a wild mushroom. And that'll really help key you in more and more into what type of things you need to look for to identify certain species. And then you might learn one or two species really well, and you could grow from that over time.
Is there, in terms of, we've talked, you mentioned kind of weather, Flagstaff with elevation and terrain, do those, it sounds like that, those conditions also lend themselves to a favorable mushroom harvesting in Flagstaff and around there?
Yeah, the mushrooms, mostly grow where the mountains are. So if you're really into, looking for wild edible mushrooms or just the largest diversity of fungi that you could find, you want to go to those mountainous environments that are, getting more rain because they're in higher elevations, but then also they have a greater diversity of trees. And a lot of our mushrooms are mycorrhizal species, meaning they grow from tree roots and they are in relationships with those trees. And so, for example, if you go to Flagstaff, we have great ponderosa pines all around. If you go a little higher up in elevation, and you get out of the ponderosa pine vegetation type and you get into the mixed conifer and spruce fir. And there, instead of having just one tree species, you have, 4 or 5, possibly 6 tree species that you're looking at in those forest types. And so they have a much greater diversity of mushroom types. And that could be pretty fun, especially on a monsoon season like this, to just see the unbelievable diversity that our forests here in Arizona have.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the menu changes a little bit as you get into different elevations, different tree types, and things like that. Now, when I was a kid, and it goes back a lot of years, and this is really kind of what caught my eye, my dad and uncles and cousins and I would go mushroom hunting in Illinois, and it was after the rainy times, which there's a lot more of back there. But I seem to recall that kind of mossy areas, the shaded side of trees, if I remember some of the rules and those kinds of things, were additional conditions that led to a successful mushroom gather. If folks want to get out, particularly if they're very new to this kind of hobby and activity, what are some of the basics that they should know before they get out there and just start picking away?
That is a great question, especially here in Arizona, where usually the moisture and the precipitation is the limiting factor. And so we're always looking for those parts of the landscape that hold on to that moisture a little better. And so we're looking for the northern aspects of hillsides and mountains and slopes, the north facing parts of the mountain, because those are getting less direct sunlight over time. They usually have a little heavier vegetation, which provides a little more shade as well. And all that serves to, keep in just a little bit of extra moisture, keep the temperatures down a little bit from the extremes, and that lets those underground mycelium really grow and flourish more. So I always tell people, you want to be in those high elevation forests. You want to look on the north facing slopes for your best success at finding different mushrooms. On a year like this, with all the rain we've got, it doesn't matter. There are mushrooms everywhere in the forest. I mean, I even went out just, a little while ago for a walk, and there was just mushrooms everywhere. It doesn't matter, if you're in the ponderosa pine type or higher, or even in the pinyon juniper forest, there was mushrooms popping all over. So this year really has been something else.
I know that we would want to be conscientious. People who enjoy this area, respect it and appreciate it, generally are. With the wet conditions, of course, forest roads and access roads are going to be muddy and can be damaged very easily with vehicles. So we want to be careful about that. What are some of the other considerations? Am I going to need tools? Rakes or hose or anything like that? Can I simply bend down and pluck, I guess might be the word, the mushrooms I'm after? What might I need in terms of, gear or equipment, if any?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when we plan our forays, I always tell people to bring what you would bring on a long hike. So you want to bring, good hiking shoes and rain gear here in the Southwest during monsoon season, and snacks and a lot of water and sunglasses and sunscreen. So, just what you would normally bring. I think especially for mushroom hunting, you want to bring a GPS unit, because you're going to be wandering around the forest, looking at the ground, not really paying attention where you're going. And it's actually really easy to get lost. And then if you happen to find some nice fungi that you want to take home, either to identify or possibly to eat, it's helpful to have a basket or paper bag that you can put that in. You don't want to use plastic bags because they tend to turn to mush if you put those mushrooms in plastic bags. But a basket works really well. It keeps them nice and aerated. They could spread their spores as you go. And then having a nice trusty knife to cut those mushrooms. It doesn't really matter if you cut them or pluck them out of the ground, if you're just collecting mushrooms, to eat them or anything other than identification purposes. But if you're collecting mushrooms to identify them, you want to completely dig that mushroom out of the ground, because some of the features of the base of the stem can be key for identifying that mushroom to a species. And so depending on what you want to do, you either want to cut it or pick it. It doesn't really matter to the mushroom so much. The organism itself is underground and out of sight. You're picking the fruit of that organism like you would pick, an apple from an apple tree. It doesn't hurt the tree when you pick that apple.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, do I need a permit? Am I allowed to just pick mushrooms on public lands, or how does that work?
Yeah, we're really blessed here in Arizona, especially in northern and central Arizona, that we are surrounded by public lands, and particularly National Forest System lands. And the National Forests around here, their rules say that you can pick mushrooms for personal use. And so you could pick mushrooms and take them home and cook them up, and that's within the rules. But you can't pick mushrooms and then try to turn around and sell them. That goes against the rules. You would need a permit to do that from the Forest Service.
Gotcha.
And so the most important thing, if you're picking on National Forest Service land, is to follow the Forest Service rules. Stay on the designated roads, don't drive off-road and cause damage to the forest, and you'll be fine.
Sounds great. All right, we need to take a short break. Terrific conversation. Mike Dechter with the Arizona Mushroom Society. This wet monsoon has the mushrooms bloomin'. But which ones can we take home and eat safely, and which ones should we leave right where they are? We'll talk about that in our next segment. It's Countywide, and we'll be back right after this.
Life changes, then it changes again. Predicting the unexpected in life is impossible. That's why it's called unexpected. So when it comes to financial goals, our philosophy is don't predict, prepare. Hi, I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Matthias Sandoval. A job loss, change in health, or a loss of a loved one can have a big impact on your family's financial security. Let's work together to help make sure you're equipped for life's unexpected events. Call our office to schedule a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Verde Solaire, your hometown heating, air conditioning, and plumbing company in the Verde Valley for 38 years, and your trusted North Central Arizona Goodman dealer. Goodman is a name you can trust, designed, engineered, and built in the USA. Verde Solaire offers free in-home estimates on systems that are quiet and affordable. Verde Solaire is locally owned since 1983 and available for all your heating, air conditioning, and plumbing needs. Call 928-567-5315. Visit them online at verdesolaire.com. Better, cleaner, faster.
Taxes.
It's that time again. This is Lewis with Rice Accounting Jackson Hewitt Tax Service. We don't sell cars, we don't do hair or wait tables. We do taxes. At Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, we talk taxes and we prepare taxes. Open year-round for tax filings. Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, located throughout northern Arizona. For over 20 years, our local preparers have helped neighbors pay their fair share and no more.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service in the Tri-Cities at 772-7872. That's 772-7872.
And again, welcome back to the program. Brad Miller with you, Countywide. And again, our guest today, Mike Dechter with the Arizona Mushroom Society. Mushrooms on the mind, as our wet monsoon has provided a bountiful bumper crop of mushrooms, and Mike talking to us from Flagstaff today, Mushroom Central, with its elevation and rich geography, ripe for mushrooms this rainy season. Mike, I saw a meme, and I saw it a couple of weeks ago before this conversation entered my mind, and I tried to find it, and I couldn't, but it said something like, it was about mushrooms, and it said, well, that one tastes like beef. That one goes great with corn and other vegetables. That one killed Kevin. And the point being, I think any of us have heard, that mushrooms can be make you very, very sick, sometimes perhaps even fatally so. So that's going to be, it seems, a prime question that newbies particularly are going to have when they go out and start collecting mushrooms. Are there rules of thumb? What would you advise?
Yeah, there's really only one rule, and that is you have to know, what mushroom you have if you're going to eat it. So there's, none of the wives' tales about, these rules of thumb are true. So, for example, if a squirrel eats it, then you could eat it. No, that's not true. I wouldn't eat squirrel food, and probably a good idea if you don't either. People say there's some weird ones, like if you boil it with a nickel or a quarter in the water and it turns black, then you can't eat those. No, I've never seen that, and I'm not sure where that comes from, but that's not true. And people say you can't eat white-gilled mushrooms, and that's not true either. There's a lot of white-gilled mushrooms out there that are edible and quite choice. And so you really just have to, learn what you're dealing with there. The good news is there's a lot of resources out there to help you figure out, what mushroom you may have. There's groups on Facebook called the Arizona Mushroom Forum, where people post pictures and information about what they find that they can help get identification. There's a very cool app called iNaturalist, which is very helpful and can help you identify things. And then, of course, there's the old dichotom is key. If you want to, take close notes of what you're looking at and then run it through, all of the reference manuals. I
took a look just very cursorily, and I didn't kind of dive deeply. And it wasn't what I saw. There was a page, but it wasn't necessarily particular to our area, the Southwest or Flagstaff or any breakdown of that. And I'll tell you, honestly, my head started to swim. And it was kind of cautionary. It was, the premise of the article that led to what I was looking at was about don't eat mushrooms. A few of them can be fatal, but many of them said, well, you're just going to get real, real sick, and there's not going to be any a dining pleasure kind of taken from them. It seems to me in a situation like this, better safe than sorry. If you collect them and go through the material, the resources that you listed, and are still not able to make a good determination of what you got, that might be one that you're just going to have to enjoy the picking of and the hiking for, and maybe not on the dining room table. Is that kind of a way to think about it?
Yeah, exactly. And, here in Northern Arizona, we're really lucky because we have huge quantities of a mushroom called the lobster mushroom, which is one of the easiest to identify and, a very well-liked mushroom for the plate as well. And so you could start with something very simple like that, maybe your first year if you're really wanting to eat a wild mushroom. And then, season after season, you can kind of add on to that. And so if that's an interest of yours, I would say start small, build up your repertoire little by little by, working with one mushroom at a time. And before you know it, you'll know a handful and you'll be quite handy out there in the woods.
Like anything, with experience, you'll gain knowledge and expertise. Have you ever gotten a hold of a bad mushroom, ever eaten one that's made you sick or had some kind of an ill effect?
Yeah, I've eaten probably over 100 different species of wild mushrooms here in Arizona. And I had one experience one time where I ate a Rusula mushroom, which are not thought to be toxic in that genus unless they're blackening. And this was a non-blackening one. And it made me feel a little nauseous and uncomfortable. And, I got lucky. I didn't get really sick, but it definitely scared me straight. And I always tell people on my forays, don't trust those Rusulas. You got to watch out for those, even though they say that they're okay, you got to watch them. But the truth about mushrooms is, they're just like other foods. You could be allergic to a certain species of mushroom that everyone else is fine with. And so in that particular situation, it was probably me just having an allergic reaction to that species.
I was going to say, and it seems like individually there can be different outcomes too if we're kind of unfamiliar, like anything. A lot of other kind of foods. Do mushrooms? I mean, they're basically they're like a fungus. Do they? You mentioned frost eventually will kill them off, but do they go bad? Can I pick mushrooms in a location 1 week, return 2 weeks later, and they've gone over, so to say, or does it not work like that with mushrooms?
Yeah, I mean, definitely they're ephemeral, where they kind of come and go pretty quick, and it's all about timing for, picking mushrooms here in the Southwest. We get, these intense monsoon storms, and then we get, the next day the sun comes out and temperatures rise and it gets really hot, and those mushrooms can wilt, they can rot. If it gets cold, they'll decompose if they freeze immediately afterwards. And so, yeah, they're pretty ephemeral, and they're hard to find in the first place. And so, a lot of times you'll find a spot where you just see a lot of mushrooms fruiting, and you'll go back there several times and you'll start to learn, oh, okay, I see this species at this time of year and this species at this time of year, and that becomes one of your spots, and you become a little familiar with it. And that's kind of the fun of mushroom hunting.
Sure. It sounds great. Well, and a great family activity, and that's what I remembered about it most. My cousins and I don't know how many mushrooms we actually picked. We were playing cops and robbers and things like that. But it was a lot of fun, and then we'd go home, clean them, and we'd have a big cookout with steaks and, the whole kinds of things. So it sure can be a terrific kind of family project. Before our next break, I got to ask, this is going to go kind of off target of what I know that we're talking about. There's in the news these days an awful lot of discussion about psychedelics, including mushrooms, being treated or being perhaps a component for treating depression and other mental illnesses. Have you studied that at all, or is that just too far afield of what your focus is?
Well, I've read a lot about it like you, and I'm not surprised. I mean, what I've come to find over and over are our mushrooms are like little chemical factories. I mean, some of them create these really unique and interesting scents. Some of them give you psychedelic experiences. Some of them create extremely hazardous toxins. And so, it's not really surprising to me that we're still learning that they have these unique features and chemicals they're creating that can really help us, in our life. That doesn't surprise me one bit at all. And I think mushrooms are kind of part of the cryptic kingdom. It's one of the kingdoms of life that we still are learning a lot about, and we just don't know very much about compared to the others.
All right, terrific. All right, let's take a final break. When we come back, we'll kind of wrap up. We'll give you some information again, and perhaps mention again some of the resources that Mike talked of earlier, and identifying the kinds of mushrooms that you're going to go out and pick, and maybe even do it this weekend. It is Countywide. Our guest is Mike Dechter, Arizona Mushroom Society. We'll come back and wrap it up right after this.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Service for over 25 years and continues to serve the communities in northern Arizona. Jackson Hewitt is here to help you file your personal taxes. As laws and situations change, your local Jackson Hewitt Tax Service professional stays updated to serve you. Drop off or make an in-person appointment in Flagstaff. Call 213-8626. That's 213-8626. That's 213-8626.
The award-winning experts at Verde Solaire Services offer the trusted carrier products that help you customize a solution to fit your budget. Verde Solaire is a family-owned business serving the Verde Valley for 38 years with the carrier products you can rely on. Carrier AC systems are trusted to bring energy-efficient, quiet, consistent comfort. Call 928-567-5315 for a free assessment of your AC and air quality needs. Verde Solaire Services, online at verdesolaire.com, a factory-authorized carrier dealer.
Don't let concerns about today's events derail your long-term financial strategy. Hi, I'm Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Matthias Sandoval, and I'm here to help. We can work together to understand the impact of these events and make sure your goals are top of mind. While you can't control the market volatility, we'll focus on what you can control. We can connect in several virtual ways. Start by giving me a call at 634-1044.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Brad Miller. It's Countywide, and again, Mike Dechter is with the Arizona Mushroom Society, and mushroom hunting is perhaps at a peak right now with the very wet season that we've been blessed with here in northern Arizona. As we conclude, Mike, if I could, I know some folks are going to want to get out there, put on the hiking boots, and gear up like you described. A good stop in terms of research and study and preparation. Where might we go on the internet to get ourselves ready to make a successful mushroom hunt?
Well, I think there's a few good resources that you can check out. One is I would check out the iNaturalist app and or webpage, because getting that on your phone could help you identify mushrooms, and it could also help others kind of give you their opinion on what you're finding. So it's a really nice way of communicating about a specimen you find that you're trying to figure out the identification of. There's also a Facebook group called Arizona Mushroom Forum, which is just focused on Arizona mushrooms. And there's a lot of folks like myself and others like Terry Clements, who's an amazing amateur mycologist that we work with a lot, who are on there all the time identifying mushrooms. And it really helps out if we can get good pictures of the top and the bottom and what it's growing from. And, usually with those basic information, we can tell you what you're dealing with there and save you a lot of time. And then that would be a good starting point for you instead of an ending point to verify those characteristics and make sure that, what we think it is what you actually have. And, if you do that enough, that's how you learn mushrooms over time. Here are the characteristics that identify this species versus this other species that may be a lookalike. And so that's a really good way to help you out. And then the last resource I would suggest are good old field guides. There's a lot of good mushroom field guides out there. There's a great one called Mushrooms of the Rocky Mountain Region, which is really based a little north of here, but covers the same habitat types. And anything by David Aurora will serve you well.
All right, terrific. Well, Mike, again, we do appreciate it. What a fun activity, a wholesome one, a tasty one. And I'm sure a lot of folks are going to get out and continue doing what they've grown to love, and maybe some new converts after hearing you share time with us today. So we do very much appreciate it. Mike Dechter, the Arizona Mushroom Society, and that's countywide. We'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday at this time. If you have a topic or guest idea that you'd like to suggest, email us, news@myradioplace.com.